Hey everybody, welcome back to FDE. I'm Mac. I've been waiting to put this one off for a little bit as far as the video goes because I've needed to take a step back and go over a video, go over footage, go over notes, and really figure out what happened. So, as you can probably tell by that, it was not a very good weekend. Didn't have any luck in any of the heats, and even the feature was a total bust. Both figuratively and physically speaking, when it comes to the kart, a bust. Ended up breaking the kart just a little bit on the feature, but it was to my own fault. Just in general, the whole week was driver error, let's just say. There's a couple things I want to go over, so this might be a little bit more strung out than my normal videos. So, KC Raceway as a track. Nothing against Mike and KC Raceway and what they have done. They have done an absolute amazing job with this track. And their intended purpose for this track was to be wider, bigger, faster, but most importantly, a multi-line track. And it has the potential to do it, but between the way it's set up and the way that drivers drive it to get it prepped and set up are two totally different things that are frustrating to work with. So KC Raceway as a track is a 5th mile, I want to say oval, but honestly with the fact that they have the pucks that they can move in and out, they can actually make it into a specific type of triangle if they wanted to. So that in itself plays a big role in how drivers drive. So I walked the track right before the feature and noticed that as much as they want the track to be a multi-line track, it was not going to be that night. There was one line that basically was hard, it was prepped, it held. It was actually a good night for the track, but for one specific line. So what I did is I walked that line and figured out that, you know, if you stay on that track, if you turn it incorrect, it'll work. But I tried seeing what would be on the high side, on the high line. The problem I had was the fact that if you got high on the track, it turned into a soft and squishy type of dirt, like super squishy. I stepped on it and my foot just sunk in. The way you set your kart up for a track, going from a hard, well-prepped, good line track to a not well-prepped, squishy track that has no rubber down on it, that's two totally different setups on your kart that you're doing. And trying to make one work where it's not supposed to, it's impossible. That's no one's fault, no one to blame besides, honestly, in my opinion, the drivers. This is not a stab at any of the drivers because they're all good drivers. The problem I have is the fact that the track previously was an 8th mile short track. I mean, it was a single line track. It was quick, it was fast in one line, and that's because the track was shorter all the way around and they really didn't have much to work with. I went and watched them last year a couple times and quickly realized it's one lane. So unless the person in front of you messes up and you have an opportunity to get past them, you basically have to play follow the leader. With that being said, my issue is not so much with the track and being prepped, but understanding that that track has an amazing potential to be a multi-line track, and if drivers are not going to drive it that way, the track is worthless when it comes to multi-line racing. You know, when drivers drive, they play follow the leader and they just pack in this one line just over and over and over, and everybody's hitting that line and nobody's taking the chance to do a high out, low in effect. I'm a little frustrated with it, but it is what it is and I can't do anything about it. The track has an amazing potential, and a good show of this is the race that I went back and forth with the kid in front of me, which I learned his name is now Ashton. If you go watch the video of the KC Raceway June 6th race where I came in second, but we swapped back and forth for first and second, that was a prime example of how that track can be utilized. It was set up great on high as well as great on low. That, in my opinion, is what that track is meant to do. Ashton played a low to mid line where I played a high line on the outside, being aggressive on the inside. So where Ashton was coming in super early on his apex and leaving way outside on his exit, I was having the kart high outside and able to turn in later on the apex, which enabled me to come on the inside of him. And you'll see it if you watch that video. He ran a different line, I ran a different line, and because he could get certain parts of me, I could get certain parts of him. But that's the best part, is because it's a multi-line track at that point. And that was by far the most fun I've had knowing that, which is frustrating now because the night that we raced for this episode, they got rain the night before, like an inch of rain. They had a great opportunity to pack it in top to bottom, and it's not technically Mike and the crew's fault. In my opinion, it's the driver's fault. You need to have drivers that are willing to go outside of follow the leader, taking high side on the straights and coming in hard on the inside. Otherwise, you've got a one-lane track. On that note, let's just talk about how the night went. So there's a reason I didn't do as well as I did. It has a lot to do with the setup, as well as the track, as well as just me driving. So right out of the gate, I took an experiment on heat 1, and I brought my tire pressures down. I was really curious to see what it would do. So I brought my tire pressures down to see what low tire pressure would do on what was kind of a medium to high bite track at that time. And in doing so, the car was just luggish, as it was supposed to be, but again, I just wanted to test it. The car was luggish. I was toting around basically heavy tires is what that'll do. I tried to compensate that by changing gear ratios to help out the motor, but in the end, it was actually a lot more loose than I thought it was going to be. As you'll see, it did me no good. On this first heat, I ended up getting P-pick on the inside, and to no fault of Derek. Derek, this is not your fault at all. I was honestly just in his way. I was a slower kart by far. He had a good line, pushed me a little bit, spun me around. Heat 1 wasn't the best, but take a look. So heat 2, after I realized the tire pressure was not where it needed to be, I decided to read the notes from previous runs, go back and make tire adjustments back to a more normalized tire pressure. Heat 2 was interesting because, again, with the track setup, because everybody went in a single place, I couldn't go as low as I wanted to go, and it showed. The cart was doing fine, but in the turns where I normally like to hug the inside, that's not where the hard line was. And because of it, my front left could not get any grip. And when your front left cannot get any grip, it slides and throws everything to the outside right tires. And in doing so, that then lugs the outside right down, which then lugs the motor, which then slows you down. It was just one thing after the other. And like I said, I'm not trying to complain at all, and I promise I'm not. A lot of this was driver error. A lot of this was me not recognizing where the line was and playing it to my advantage. I was trying to force a line on a track that didn't have a multi-line track, which is frustrating. You see the acreage you're working with, you see how much track you have to work with, and it's just frustrating as a driver when you're trying to say to the other drivers, use that real estate, drive high. There have been so many tracks I've been on where you can drive high and still pass people. You don't have to be on the inside to pass. I mean, there's a specific reason why, you know, every other race, whether it be big oval, late dirt models, or even NASCAR. NASCAR is not fair because it's all asphalt. I get it. But this dirt can get just as hard, just as sticky, and just as good as what an asphalt track would do. And if you notice in NASCAR, sometimes they'll do 3, 4 wide on a turn. Why aren't we? Why can we not pack the track in as drivers to get that way? And I don't know where it is. I don't know if it's the KC crew saying, all right, this line is in. We're going to put the cones out. Now you've got to pack in this high side. The problem is, though, is that if you do have a multi-line track, to the drivers, use it. Otherwise, you're wasting KC Raceway's time and effort for what they wanted that track to be. It's frustrating to sit back and have to say that, want to reach out to the drivers, because they put in a lot of work, a lot of money. They have put in a lot of time. Mike especially, he's put in a lot of effort to make this a multi-line track. And if the drivers are not going to help that, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. It's up to Mike and the crew basically to try to make the track even, and that's very difficult to do. And the only way I can see them doing it is to not give an opportunity for a hard hooking track. You kind of got to keep it a little bit dusty. Force people to go places they don't want to go because there's no stick, there's no grab. So getting back to Heat 2, I tried to take a low side, tried to hug the pucks. Front left couldn't grab, threw everything out to the outside rights, which lugged everything down. Derek, you did a great job seeing the line, and I got to give you more credit than anything right now. That was your night. You found the line, you followed it, your cart was hooking up great. I couldn't find the line that you were finding, and unfortunately I paid for it. So Heat 2, take a look. The feature race was an interesting one to say the least. Right out of the gate, within the first 2 or 3 laps, those little white pucks I knew were going to come back and get me, and they did. I drove over them and tore half of the floorboard off, the front half, to the point that I knew that it had torn off because my feet went from nice and comfortable racing to riding on the ground and just dragging like Flintstone style. And it was at that point I knew that my floorboard at some point was gone. And you'll even see in the video, I come up and I'm trying to look down. You can't see it because it's too dark, but I'm trying to see if the gas tank is good, because the gas tank rides on the floor plane as well. And the last thing I want is the gas tank just rolling around and then I turn into a fiery ball. So after I saw the gas tank was secured and good to go for as good as it was going to get, I then found out after driving a little bit that my left foot was dragging a lot. It was on my mind. It took me away from what was happening in front of me. So I got to the point where all I could do literally was take my left foot and put it on my right foot and just mash the gas and pray that I didn't have to use the brake because, well, I didn't have a foot there for the brake. And if anything was to happen, I legit was going to be Flintstoning it. So that didn't help. That took my mindset out of it at the beginning of the race, unfortunately. But I do want to go over something. After going back and looking at the numbers, looking at my laps and everything on live timing, I was the fastest kart out there in the feature. I just couldn't drive. So it wasn't anything against the setup. I had the setup on. I had the kart set up. I just couldn't get it to drive. What that did to me is when I was driving this track, I tried to play a low line. I tried to get down because I knew the outside was going to be soft and squishy because, like I said, I walked right before the feature and the outside was soft and squishy. So I tried to play a little bit lower on the inside line, not where the general line was, the single line for this track was. And in doing so, there wasn't as much traction down there, and so my left front, again, lost traction, which slid, which pushed all of the traction to be remaining over to the right side tires, which lugged them down and bound them down, which bound the kart up, which snowball effect did not work well at all. Took to the last half of the race to finally figure out where the kart wanted to be, where the good line was. But I will say, in the last laps, I did, like I said, I was the fastest kart. And so had I known all this before and figured it out quickly, it would have been more of a race, but unfortunately it was too late. But that's not to say that I didn't learn something, because obviously I did. With that being said, I'm still somewhat frustrated at how this is all coming to fruition. Mike and his crew has done an amazing job at getting this track to be set up as a multi-line track. I wish I could reach out to every driver and say, guys, we have an amazing opportunity to switch things up here. We've got an amazing opportunity to have this 2-3 kart wide line track. And until you guys as drivers help set up the track the way that Mike and the crew is trying to get us to set it up, we're stuck to a 1-lane track. We're stuck to playing basically follow the leader. And it was very apparent in the bigger classes with the clones. I watched the clones over and over, and even on the feature, you would see a kart that would try to take an outside line, and because they got too far out of the single line touching that squishy side, the kart was done, and the kart would lose momentum. Now, yes, there were passes made, but those passes were made because the person in front made a little bit of a mistake on their end, coming out too wide on exit, and that allowed a kart to come on the inside and make a pass. That is not a multi-line track. That is just you taking advantage of a mistake somebody made because they got out of that line, the only line. And I wish I could take the video from June 6th and show everybody that this track has the potential to be a multi-line track. You know, Ashton was taking a low line, I was taking a high line. And both lines were great. They worked great for what I was doing. It worked great for what he was doing. It proved that we could make different lines and be just as fast or faster than each other in separate parts. Now you take that and apply that to 8 to 10 to 12, 15 karts. That is some fun racing to watch. But when you're playing follow the leader on one line the entire time, it's very frustrating as a driver because you're stuck. The only chance you have is either you've got to push the person in front of you, which is not always fun, and I've done it before, to try to get them out of the way, or they make a slight mistake that you take advantage of. But it's never because you found a great line on the track, because it's all one line. This track has some major potential, and it's so frustrating to watch the videos, look at the stats, look at the numbers, and just be like, there was nothing I could do. Even if the kart was spot on and just as fast and just as great as the guys in front of me, that doesn't mean that I was ever going to pass him. The only chance I'd have is, like I said, is if he would have made a mistake and I capitalized on it. That's not racing. That's not fun. That's just playing follow the leader until the leader messes up. But you go watch that June 6th video, that's racing. That's two people having two different driving styles, finding two different lines, and racing each other with those lines. My kart, my setup, my track versus your kart, your setup, and your track. And it was awesome, and people loved it. But that's no more than the track owner and prepper's fault as much as it is the driver's fault. And that's all I can say about that. Another thing that was brought to my attention was the fact that my tires are dang near on the bald side, which means that I need to get some tires. So I'm looking for some new tires, which means I have a whole another set of problems coming my way. The next race that we have is the Traveling Predator Predator Hoosier class, which is what I race. That means I'm going to have new tires, new tread, different stagger, different setup with a very competitive field. So I'm going to be relearning and retesting this kart amongst a big, huge field. It's going to be an interesting one to say the least. But we'll deal with that when it comes around. Either way, feature race, take a look. Still a little frustrated with how things work, but can't change it. Just got to move forward. So enjoy.